The question of how Latino students pay for college was one we tackled back in 2005, and we have sustained that effort over the years. It is therefore really our pleasure to join the ranks of 15 other organizations selected by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to study this issue and to really look at the perspective of Latino students and the trend line of how Latinos are engaging in the educational enterprise of this country. Our author is Excelencia's co-founder and our Vice President for Policy and Research, Deborah Santiago. We are most pleased that in this opportunity to weigh in on this issue, this afternoon we are joined by members of Congress, colleagues who care about this issue and who have a connection of Excelencia beyond this afternoon's presentation. Not only do we have the findings of the report, which we hope you've picked up, but we will have each of the panelists consider this set of ideas, this first white paper for Excelencia in Education, and how in their work they are thinking about the ideas, but the issue and the strategy.
We've often found in our work, and I'm sure you all have in your work, that Latinos are often, when we disaggregate by race ethnicities, we're often the footnote or the aside. And so the idea behind Latino Lens is not to exclude any other group, but to say this young, fast-growing population, we should start with that. That's our baseline for work rather than the footnote and the aside. When we look at policy, especially effective policy, as it relates to students today, this young and growing population in the future. So in this discussion, we talk to students, we talk to institutional leaders, we talk to communities, to partners, and this concept of a post-traditional student came up. And the concept being, we know everyone would say, well, these are non-traditional students. Well, you know, for us, non connotes something that's very negative. You're not the standard, you're not the norm. And often we hear that, right? But something that's post-traditional means it's evolved beyond the traditional. And for us, it was important to say that because Latinos are, I think, representative of that post-traditional student body. And our policy needs to focus on that post-traditional student body. The post-traditional student is our growing majority. So they're more likely to not be college ready necessarily. They're more likely to be enrolled part-time at a community college, to take online courses or go to multiple institutions, to might need remedial education or some support, to work 30 hours or more, and we have almost 70% of students who are working at some point or other, and are looking at college choices that are often different than conventional wisdom, where we often think students make choices based on financial aid, academic prestige, and programs. I think many of us who went in a traditional pathway made our college choices based on that. So looking at students who make choices based on affordability and cost, location, and accessibility. And when you look at that framing, that just those characteristics of the post-traditional student, I think it creates an opportunity to reimagine financial aid in ways that can serve this population well.
Delighted to come and join my friends and colleagues, new members of Congress who, in my opinion, are going to turn things around in a way that is going to make each and every one of you very, very happy, because they have great energy, knowledge about how things are done in the state legislatures, and they've done things that naysayers would tell them that they couldn't do it. So now they're coming and joining the Congressional Hispanic Caucus members and making it now the biggest number that we have ever had in our nation's history. We're up to 27, and when you add those that are on the other side of the aisle, plus our senators, we're 33. And of course that is going to show that there is a lot of effort, a lot of manpower and human resources being put into the issues that you all are discussing here today. But I am going to talk to you in a way that is very frank, but very honest and realistic. That doesn't change the program nor the paper that was drawn up by the leadership of Excelencia. It is doable, and I will support it sometime in the future. But let me say, that one of the biggest challenges that we as members of Congress have is to be able to compromise with folks on the other side of the aisle and to make cuts that are going to be balanced, both raising revenues and reducing costs. And that is what we are facing. As I said earlier, the brief is very timely, and I commend Excelencia for using a Latino lens to examine how federal financial aid policies impact our Latino college students. As greater numbers of Latinos and low-income students enter our colleges and universities, it's very imperative that we do more to ensure that they receive the guidance and the financial aid necessary to be able to be successful in college.
I have had the advantage of seeing the work that Excelencia does from a executive branch where Sarita helps sensitize what are institutional deficiencies in addressing what is a demographic shift of tremendous importance that's going on in our country. And so understanding the community you're serving or understanding what that future community is going to look like requires understanding that community. You know, when you calculate the resources available, and while I agree with the chairman that those resources are limited, what is clear is that the reality on the ground is not going to change. And every dollar we invest in education is a dollar that the country gets back long term. The recommendations of this report and understanding the population that we're trying to access require a rethinking about education. And with that in mind, we can better understand the long-term commitment that our country has and how to make that commitment achieve, that commitment a success. You know, I think about my personal journey and accessing education. I had the great advantage that I was in a community where you had Latino serving institutions, some of the largest in the country, easily accessible and easily understood. You know, the construct of the classic four-year liberal arts degree was something that was not in my point of reference and in my family. I remember my final year of college, I had been elected student body president, so they gave you a stipend, you could afford a dorm. And I finally realized, so this is what college life, but I'd already spent way too much time in college, so it was time to move on.
Thank you all for addressing the need for more on-campus jobs and work study so that students are better tethered to their colleges and universities. What we often see is this incredible work school tug of war that students are going through when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, sometimes even older. Sometimes you have a mom who may be 27 or 28 years old who decides to go back to school but is pulled away from school because of work considerations. I remember being back home in the summer of 1999, running into a friend that had graduated with me from high school in 1992, and she told me that she was a manager, I think it was at one of the retail stores at the mall back then, and she wanted to go back to finish off her degree, but her boss had essentially said, you know, we need you at certain hours, and those were the hours that she would have needed to be in school to finish off her degree. So choices like that people are having to make between work and school. In Texas, for instance, the main Texas program for needy students, the main grant program, is the Texas Grant Program. Well, in 2011, as you all know, that program was slashed such that just above 60% of needy students, in other words, people who qualified by income for this grant, actually receive any kind of money from the grant. So, in other words, you're not even serving all of the needy students, or even at this point, 2/3 of the needy students. That is a big deal because we know when you consider the fact that costs have been rising in public universities, obviously in private universities, but when you have also a trend line going the other way for financial aid, that's a big problem, especially for Latino families who we know are not the wealthiest in the United States.
But the whole notion that we all are messengers, we all are critical in the lives of the families, and not just high school counselors where they're losing jobs. And it's amazing that we have to advocate for these people who are there to help, to translate, to interpret so much of this changing landscape. So Deborah put it into the report, and this whole notion about college costs. We can't have this conversation without really talking about the notion of a $40,000 or $50,000 family income. And we're looking at college choices that are what? $50,000 or something? The prospect of that and the reality either of the debt or applying for all of this and what that may mean to a family.
So we look forward to continuing dialogue with you about these critical topics. Thank you so much.